Good evening, Blade enthusiasts, and thank you for tuning in to another Studio GDT Reviews. Tonight we're going to be taking a look at the ShadowDancer Crucible Steel Myoho Muramasa Replica. I like to call this specific model the Muramasa Lite because there are two, and we're going to be looking at the more cost-effective of the two. This is going to be a history and informational heavy review, so if that's not your thing and you're looking for some fancy ninja slicing and dicing, you can go ahead and skip it. But if you like a little bit of background to the hows and the whys of something that's a little bit unique, then this would be for you. Let's get this out of the way real quick. I'm in no way, shape, or form an expert in Japanese swordsmanship, nor am I an expert in reproduction swords. Any opinions expressed herein are my own, and they are not fact. Take them with a grain of salt. The sword reviewed today was sent as a review sample. I did not pay for it. If I did or I did not, that would not change the things that I say about it. As always, exercise caution and be careful when handling sharp objects. Just have fun. Coming in at $790, the Muramasa replica is not inexpensive, but there's a required host of custom features in order to make this close to the historical sword that it is based off of. Interestingly enough, Muramasa does not have any swords that are registered as national treasures. Only the Myoho Muramasa that this sword is based off is listed as an important artwork. I like to call this version the Muramasa Lite because it lacks the horimono that is on the historical sword as well as the $3,000 Z-Save version. There's also tamahagane steel in the Z-Save version, so it is more closely accurate to the historical sword, but you can still get the unique features other than the horimono that are on the Myoho Muramasa with this sword itself. So that's our brief introduction. Let's dive into another piece of something that makes this sword unique. What makes the Myoho Muramasa replica very interesting to me is the sword that it is originally based on is what you would call a Katate-Uchigatana, a one-handed sword. This is not a wakizashi, it is not a katana, it's an odd hybrid between the two with a shorter length Suka designed to be used by one hand but with an overall length more akin to a standard katana size. If you take a look here, you can very clearly see that, there is not room for a two-handed grip on this. The Suka is really designed for your one hand to be nestled right in the center of it and to be wielding this very kind of whippedly. And if you take a look at the full length of the sword, this is by in no way, shape, or means wakizashi length. So what's the deal with this? Where did it come from? Well, if you take a look historically, the term Uchigatana was used for swords that were carried upright in the belt. And those were two-handed swords, and the term Katate-Uchi was specifically derived for this hybrid sword. This sword, from the research that I've found at least, is really just occupies a small footnote in history because the majority of them were all made at a particular time frame. The majority of them were all in very specific koshire, and it didn't seem like it lasted very long. Somebody quickly figured out, hey, you know what? We could probably make this blade a little bit longer, make the Suka a little bit longer, and it could be a much more better two-handed sword, and then we could keep the Suka the same size or even elongate it a little bit, but bring the blade in shorter and make it the companion sword or wakizashi. So the Katate-Uchi you don't really see. What's interesting is how the phrases and nomenclature has changed over time. So we've come to call katana, right? Katana, or what we associate with a two-handed sword, right? When in fact, really, it was Uchigatana originally. And now, when you see Uchigatana used, it's actually used when describing Katate-Uchi. So even when you take a look at swords at Tozondo shop, sometimes you'll see in Uchigatana koshire. Well, that should just mean koshire where the sword would be worn upwards. But when you take a look at it, it's very clearly Katate-Uchi swords. So it's interesting how over time that nomenclature's changed a little bit, but the Katate-Uchi design was originally designed to be used one-handed, worn upward in the obi like so. The first thing I noticed was the fantastic Riko shape of the Suka. I've tried to get this on many other swords and never has it come close to being the correct shape. This is pretty damn close. The lines from the Ito wrap flowed into the Kashira perfectly, which also featured the separate Shidodome that ShadowDancer is known for. Speaking on the Ito, it is the imported Japanese cotton that they use on a couple of other swords and features black samegawa. All the fittings are brass, but as you can see with this Manuki, the detail is impressive, and the fuchi is lined up perfectly with the rest of the Suka, and the detail is fantastic. The Suka does feature ShadowDancer's Hishigami Pro. Now, there was a little bit of movement. It is still quite tight. I feel like some of that movement is associated with it being cotton. I could be wrong on that, but overall it was still a fantastic job with everything nice and neat in its place. In removing the Suka, you can clearly see the inlaid Samegawa panels. I think they do a really excellent job of this, of getting them inset. It's not just a strip of same that's stuck to the outside. You can also see the Hishigami that they use. It's a nice quality wood. It's not poor quality wood either. I do think their Tsuka is pretty top notch, whether you're getting some of their base level models or something like this. The Samegawa itself isn't really anything of note. There's no emperor nodes or anything like that, but it is of good quality. One thing I appreciated was to get the exact correct fit and alignment. They had some paper inserts for the fuchi to make sure that there wasn't any rattling and it was arranged properly. I really like this attention to detail. The custom habaki is fit to the blade and does feature the inner shelf weldment. The Tanagobara Gata Nakago, or fish belly, is often attributed to Muramasa exclusively, but there are a few other schools that used this style of Nakago. The overall profile of the Tsuka is narrow, which would be required for something designed to be effectively wielded one-handed. Here, not only can you see the intricately hammered brass seppa, but the Sanskrit-themed tsuba that was installed in the correct orientation. The sword to saya alignment is fantastic as advertised. Nice thick buffalo horn koiguchi is present on a saya made of high quality wood that is fitted to the sword very well. Buffalo horn, kurigata, and koiguchi round out the accoutrement along with pressed in brass shidodome and a very nice tight ishime saya. We gotta have a moment for a samurai segue. You can't talk about Muramasa and not identify the elephant in the room, and that is the curse of Muramasa. If you've played any Japanese video game made from the 80s onward, right, every Muramasa sword you find in a JRPG, cursed. So what's the story behind this? What's the real story behind this? We're never going to truly know, but I have kind of my own take on it based on my own personal research that I've done. Take it with a grain of salt. Again, it's all amateur stuff and just me thinking about things in the way that I think about it. The Tokugawa, they really liked Muramasa swords. They had a lot of them. This is a professional fighting force. They're using their equipment every day. They're practicing with their equipment every day. And there were a lot of Muramasa swords in circulation because they were very good. We know that there were at least 3 documented instances of bad things happening where Muramasa swords were involved. Were they necessarily, swords falling down from ceilings and impaling people, Final Destination style? No, but some bad things happened in a relatively short period of time, and there was Muramasa swords at the center of them. But when you think about it, if you have a professional fighting force and you adopt some sort of standardization of equipment, right? you're going to have more exposure and more opportunity for that equipment to have negative things happen. And because more people have that equipment, you're going to hear about it more. Think of it as like a professional fighting force that has a firearm issued to them. And because there's more of these firearms in circulation, the sample pool of people who get to use it increases. You make more of something, you're also bound to have more defects, right? So I don't necessarily think that people really thought that these were cursed or cruel or anything like that. It just happened to be that there were more of these around, so the likelihood that some guy having the feudal Japanese equivalent of a negligent discharge just happened to have a Muramasa on it. I just happened to have a SIG P320 that went off in my holster. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. So that's just what I think about, because did the Tokugawa really take all these Muramasa swords and melt them down into slag and put them on walls? No, they didn't. In fact, there's evidence that even after all of the supposed decrees and, you can't bring a Muramasa sword near anybody, you still have Muramasa blades in the Tokugawa armory. If you truly thought that, or if they truly thought that it was some great evil spiritual thing, you would think that there would be no record of it whatsoever continuing to be involved in storage or anything like that. What really took place, I think, in my research, was the feudal Japanese equivalent of the media, right? And that was theater and kabuki drama and whatnot, right? They hear about a scandal that happened, and they hear about, oh yeah, he cut himself with this really, really sharp sword. Oh, really? Well, what sword was that? Muramasa. Those swords are known to be really sharp. That sounds like a great idea for a play. Let's juice it up. Let's sensationalize it. And a lot of times that's how rumors got started. It happened with portrayals of Sasaki Kojiro in the 1800s by various kabuki actors. So how much of it was fact and how much of it got blown out of proportion a little bit by, theater or whatnot, and people, did you see that play? Did you see that play? We're never going to know. But the fact is that, people weren't strung up and crucified because they kept Muramasas. Muramasas were still in armories, and really there were only about 3 known true instances of something happening, and they were all by people that all had those swords to begin with, which is highly probable when a lot of your fighting force is equipped with the same equipment. So that's my take on it. That's my samurai segue. Cursed blades or misunderstood masterpieces? I'm going to go with misunderstood masterpieces. Sucks to be Muramasa and be known for this, right? Let's get back to the sword review. The moment we've been waiting for, the sharp end. As mentioned earlier, this is Crucible Steel. Give a real basic definition of it. Crucible Steel is a combination of various materials that is melted in a crucible, which is a container that could be as small as a measuring cup or as large as a giant cauldron. Think of when you see images of steel factories with the big cup pouring out molten steel, and then that is then forged into the sword that you see today. One thing reproduction swords are typically known for is a poor habaki fit, usually because they use a one-size-fits-all approach and just kind of leave the gaps in the side. With this being a custom sword, you can see how tight the habaki fit is to the blade. That actually doesn't mean it's difficult to get off. It's actually the contrary. This habaki slides off beautifully, as opposed to some of those mass-produced ones that are probably hammered on. You can see the alignment and everything is top-notch. There is not a lot of niku present in this blade, but with it designed on being lightweight to be wielded one-handed, that makes sense. I love how you can actually see the hamon in this photo. As I mentioned earlier, a katate-uchi is not a wakizashi. This features a full 26-inch nagasa and a standard 1.6 centimeter sori. If you had a regular-sized Suka on it, it would be a katana. The blade flats were pristine with not a ripple in sight, with very sharp and crisp edges. Muramasa was known for bucking trends and not doing what everybody else was doing, and you can clearly see that in this unique hamon design. Is it Saguha? No. Is it something else? Yeah, it's Muramasa. We are looking at ShadowDancer's standard sashikomi polish, which does an excellent job of bringing out the nioi deki nature of the hamon. You can very clearly see the difference between the hardened area with the white border and the hiraji. Finishing the sword, you have an absolute master class in Kisaki design. You have a perfect geometric counter-polished yokote. You have a very straight koshinogi. You have a perfect fukura on it. It is best part of the sword. So what do you think of this replica of one of the most infamous swords from one of the most infamous smiths of all time? Do you believe in the hype? What do you think about the Katate-Uchi form factor? What do you think it would be like to train with? I know I'm going to have some difficulty when I do the Phase 2 and Phase 3 videos of this sword because I have absolutely zero one-handed sword techniques. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. Stay tuned for that and more. I hope you enjoyed this review of the Myoho Muramasa replica from ShadowDancer. Okay, I know you just sat through a rather lengthy review on this whole misunderstood masterpieces type thing, but I take back everything that I said. It's totally cursed. It's absolutely 100% cursed, and I'm afraid of it now. So I was taking my pictures like I normally would outside. I had my sword set up on my kake on my table. Pretty much done taking all the photos. It is monsoon season here, but I don't take video footage out there when it's poor weather. I'm getting ready to pick up the sword. I had the sword out of the scabbard, and this divine wind comes through out of nowhere and blows the sword off of the kake. And instinctually, what's the first thing that I do? Well, this is the most expensive sword that I have in the armory here, so instinctually, I try and grab it. Yeah, I try and grab the bare blade. So that was fun. You can imagine what happened there. And of course, when I realized what I was doing reflexively, the next reflex was to immediately let go. The sword then rotated and landed edge side right on a bunch of bricks and rocks. So super awesome. I damaged the really nice polish on it, and it is totally cursed. So be careful, Muramasa. Maybe he knew what he was doing, maybe he didn't. We won't know. But yeah,